Bernie Sanders, in less than a minute and 30 seconds, is going to perfectly explain the direction that the country needs to go.
Is it really possible for someone who calls himself a socialist to be elected president of the United States?
Well, so long as we know what democratic socialism is. And if we know that in countries in Scandinavia, like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they are very democratic countries. Obviously, the voter turnout is a lot higher than it is in the United States. In those countries, health care is a right of all people. In those countries, college education, graduate school is free. In those countries, retirement benefits, child care are stronger than in the United States of America. And in those countries, by and large, government works for ordinary people in the middle class rather than, as is the case right now in our country, for the billionaire class.
I can hear the Republican attack ad right now. He wants America to look more like Scandinavia.
That's right. That's right. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong when you have more income and wealth equality? What's wrong when they have a stronger middle class in many ways than we do, a higher minimum wage than we do, and they're stronger on the environment than we do? Look, the fact of the matter is we do a lot in our country, which is good. But we can learn from other countries. We have, George, the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth at the same time as we're seeing a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires. Frankly, I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that's what America is about.
Finally, we have somebody who's in a position of power and who's running for president that's getting up there and breaking it down and explaining exactly what's going on in the country and exactly what we need to do to fix it. And by the way, keep in mind, the stuff that he's talking about, it's not radical. It is nowhere near radical. In fact, I would argue that Bernie Sanders on the political spectrum falls essentially where I fall, which makes him an international moderate or an international centrist. This is the argument I've been trying to get across for years now. We are the centrists. We are the moderates. We're not, some sort of radical left-wing revolutionaries here. Now, within the context of the United States, we appear to be these uber-progressive revolutionaries overthrowing the system and getting crazy. But that's only because the political spectrum in the United States of America is already so fucking far to the right that the ultra-right fringe is bordering on fascism, and what used to be the center is no longer the center, and even most of today's Democrats are essentially center-right wingers. So we have no real liberals left in the United States of America, save people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Alan Grayson. And even these guys on a handful of issues, you go, what? But we don't need to get into those right now, because based off what he said right there, he is spot fucking on, man. And now understand, here's the way that I would describe this to people. You can be one of those people who, in theory, you say, well, we should make government small enough to drown it in the bathtub. Get rid of government, eliminate it, or make it really, really small, or whatever. These people are essentially libertarian-esque, people like Ron Paul. They're true conservatives in a way. So there are people who exist like that, but what I would say to those people and everybody else is, let's get serious. You're going to live in a world and you're going to live in a country where government exists. So the debate is not, hey, should we have a government or should we not have a government? The real debate is, what do we do with our tax resources? In other words, what do we do with the money that we're inevitably going to pay to the government? Because we're not going to eliminate taxes. You're not going to eliminate the IRS. That's a fucking pipe dream. Never going to happen. So then the debate just becomes, well, what should we do with the money when the government gets it? And we actually have control over that. We can put popular pressure on the government to do certain things with that money. And my argument always has been that conservatives essentially pay the government like they're appeasing the government. So they give them money and they say, okay, here, you took your 20% or whatever it is, just go the fuck away and leave me alone. And progressives have always essentially stood up and said, no, if I'm giving you 20% of my fucking money that I earned, you better do some shit for me with that money. If I'm giving you the money, you better pay it back to me in one way or another, or else why the fuck would I give it to you in the first place? So we already established that we're going to have a system where I'm paying some money in taxes, because every civilized society has that. So then what do we do with that money? And a guy like Bernie Sanders says very simply, I want that money to work for the majority of the American people. I don't want that money to essentially be given to ExxonMobil in a corporate welfare check, or give it to Walmart in a corporate welfare check, or Wall Street, $80 billion worth of subsidies to all the big banks, or to give it to the military-industrial complex to start all these wars around the world. We're engaged in 6 countries militarily right now. We have 900 military bases around the world. So Bernie Sanders says, no, we need to take all that money and just simply reallocate those resources into shit that makes sense. And what people in America don't get, and I know I've had conversations with people about this, is they don't understand just how much they're getting screwed. Because you explain to people like, no, you don't get it. You don't get it. In Scandinavia, for example, and in other places in Europe, yeah, education is totally funded even through college. Student loan debts isn't a thing. It doesn't exist. All the money that you're paying to kill people in Iraq, that money could be reallocated to pay for everybody's fucking college bills. Who could be against that? You have to be dense to be against that. Healthcare, too. The number one cause of bankruptcy in America is healthcare bills. Well, in those places, healthcare bills don't fucking exist. We've spoken about it before, man, but 45,000 people, for example, die every year in the United States of America because they don't have access to basic health care. That number in Canada is 0. That number in Australia is 0. That number in Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, Finland, Greenland, France, Britain, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Why the fuck would we accept this? Why would we sit around and say, no, that's cool, 45,000 people dead, who gives a fuck? Let's move on with our lives. Why? Why? We're giving the government money. Make them put it towards the right shit. Make them put it towards education, healthcare, daycare is another one. How many single mothers are struggling to raise their kids, and their kids don't have any, parental figures around because the parent is always working. So there's an easy way to fix that problem. Universal daycare. And you'll raise kids who are actually good kids who don't feel like they're alone. I mean, these things are obvious answers, man. These countries have minimum 6 weeks paid vacation by law. Here in America, the average is you get 1 week, and it's not by law. And sometimes it's not even paid. You're getting fucking screwed. Look at all these other countries. Look at their minimum wage. Their minimum wage is significantly better. In a lot of these countries, a minimum wage is a living wage. So if you work a full-time job, you're going to make enough money to survive. That's something all Americans agree with. If you ask them, yeah, if you work a full-time job, you should be able to survive. Well, then why the fuck are we not electing the right people and putting pressure on the politicians to get us to that point where we have a minimum wage where you can make it and, be able to survive and get by? No, that's the thing. This is what I'm trying to get through to people, man. There is no debate. Who's a better candidate, Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders? Bernie Sanders by a country fucking mile. Are we really going to even entertain the idea of who's better, Bernie Sanders or Mike fucking Huckabee? Get the fuck out of here. Tell that Christian theocrat to take his ideas and shove them right back up his ass where they belong. These guys don't know anything, and they're all corporate sellouts as they campaign on a platform of Christian theocracy. I don't like any of those things. Nobody should like any of those things. We should have a government that actually represents us and actually gives a shit about what we think in what's supposed to be a democracy. Bernie Sanders absolutely nailed it, and I don't know how anybody can disagree with the stuff he was laying out.